Have you ever wondered what the greatest Super Nintendo game is? A game so epic, everyone seems to love it? Well, you're in luck, because today we're going to discuss what many consider to be one of the greatest SNES beat-em-ups ever. A game so epic, so influential, so noteworthy, it came in a uniquely colored game cart. That's right, I'm sure that 99.9% of you have already guessed what we're going to look at. That being Maximum Carnage, a game more deserving of your time than Turtles in Time. Having owned and discussed this game for nearly 3 decades, it's hard to find anyone who really dislikes it. So what exactly makes it so astonishing? We're going to discuss exactly that. This is Retro Impressions, the greatest SNES beat 'em up of all time. Maximum Carnage is based on a 14-part major story arc that took place in 1993. If you're not familiar with the structure of American-style comics, it's important to know they all are essentially meaningless. Ad nauseum, a character's timeline is reimagined and rebooted, giving the sense that the last people to work on a story weren't that good. A group is brought on to handle the work from top to bottom, and typically they don't stick around long. This can greatly impact the quality of a story, the desirability of a character, and the reader's commitment to stick with the series. Unlike most manga, the history and identity of a character can change on a dime. Nothing is set in stone, it's all about selling something palatable to a new audience, or more recently, trying to stumble onto something that can be turned into a multi-million-dollar movie franchise. A great team can catapult this series to new heights, and oftentimes gives future teams something to come back to by creating new stories steeped in lore of past works. Maximum Carnage is a solid example of this, as we have a changing of the guard in the early 90s, with major contributors to the Spider-Man series leaving and fresh ideas coming on board. So you have a new storyline that appears to be an attempt at capturing lightning in a bottle twice by expanding it to new concepts and characters inspired by Venom's breakout success. Now, if you don't enjoy American-style comics, that's okay. You don't need to read the series to enjoy this game. A few key panels from the actual comic are actually included in this game to help the player understand exactly what's going on as they progress. So let's look at what makes this game so great. Have you ever wanted to pull on Spider-Man's suit and act the part in a game? Well, now you can. This game essentially allows you to don the suit of Spider-Man and pretend you are in fact him. Cosplaying as Spider-Man in this game is accurately portrayed as well. Throughout the entire experience, you'll encounter 6 different common thugs, and they're going to kick your rear. And that's about what I would expect as someone cosplaying as Spider-Man in the back alleys of New York. The common thugs add a ton of personality to the experience. For a game that takes around an hour for someone who's adept to finish and a lifetime for someone who's not, having 6 common enemy types to enjoy over the course of a game is a breath of fresh air. Some games, like Mutant Rampage Body Slam for the powerful CDI, have over 50 unique common enemies, and if we're shooting straight with each other, 50 is way too many to remember and identify iconic favorites such as Ponytail Person. With 6, it's like pulling on a comfortable pair of jeans. You know them, you like them, and you know what to expect. Knowing that every time I defeat these thugs, they're not really vanquished, they're just waiting around the corner for another opportunity to say hello, makes me feel like a special person. Another plus is the ability to collect superhero icons, which can be used to call real-life superheroes to the fight. I love the reality check you receive when calling any of the 6 on-call heroes who can and will clear the screen in one move, just like the real Spider-Man could if you were indeed him. Maximum Carnage doesn't hold a player's hand, and let's be honest, you don't want your hand held like a toddler, do ya? Of course not! The controls are quite solid, as is the fairly complex moveset given to both Venom and Spider-Man. True to form, the developer knew best here, and be warned, this is a bit of a spoiler, but the developer knew that including moves that were essentially pointless and a hindrance to completing the game while giving it a more Spider-Man-like appearance would be a massive win, and they were right. Being a fairly marginal gamer, I really struggled to get far into this game before having to look up complete playthroughs and speedruns years back. Seeing that successful runs relied 90% on the standard punch and kick mechanic, really helped me realize I was approaching the system all wrong. A number of years later, this has changed in the speedrun community as the top rung of players have perfected moves that are difficult to execute with consistency, such as the double smash. Being a superhero for fun is a hard business, and it's reflected well here. If you were actively playing beat-em-ups prior to this game's release, you might remember that there was often a feeling of solid world building presented in the form of vast, scrolling stages. Now, that's not always the case, but with games like Streets of Rage, you could experience different segments of a town and have a fairly solid feeling of the area by the time the end credits rolled. Sometimes, a stage would use transitions to extend the length, but Maximum Carnage, it went a completely different direction with its design, and it's quite masterful. Remember how I made mention about panels from the comic being presented in the game to help tell the story? Well, the stages themselves are kind of like that as well. In fact, it's similar to another game released just a year later called Comics Zone. In that game, you move from panel to panel, playing through the entire comic book. In Maximum Carnage, you are essentially placed in one single panel every stage. They keep them incredibly small, so you feel like you're actually trapped inside the comic. That's right, you can't even leave the panel until you have finished off the onslaught of thugs. Cool, huh? It really helps flesh out the story too, as the stage quality and design is awe-inspiring and feels like an Eisner Award-worthy effort. I love stages like Blue Building with Door. Walking back and forth in front of it is incredibly refreshing, and facing wave after wave of common thug while in front of such an iconic architectural feat really pulls you into the experience. Brown Building with Brown Door is another win, especially when you find out the stage is large enough to reveal a second brown building with a different brown door. Amazing! To be frank, I was blown away when I realized the two doors didn't match. What Easter egg would these brilliant developers toss at us next? This is a rare instance in mid-90s video games where the art design is so solid, it's so good, it's worth pausing the game just to take it all in. The stage designs never let the player down. The use of in-game assets in an attempt to utilize the game cart's storage limitations is quite brilliant, like the stage of grass, trees, and a gray wall, which is later used again without the player even realizing it by replacing the gray wall with water. With Maximum Carnage, you always feel like you're stuck at the dead end of an alley, and that's exactly what I was hoping for, expected, and it's exactly what we received. Now, with the Spider-Man game, you may be thinking the experience of easily taking down thugs in a Spider-Man-like fashion without breaking a sweat is what you really want. Thankfully, the developers here knew better. With only 6 common thugs and 6 bosses, this would be a quick affair, so the developers essentially made you a low-tier UFC fighter, put you in a Spider-Man suit, and gave you some gadgets to emulate Spider-Man-like abilities. You'll get beat up by groups of nobodies, but you're going to enjoy those beatdowns. You are, after all, cosplaying as Spider-Man, and thus the experience should and does reflect that. And this leads us up to the final point. A lot of people seem to think that beat-em-ups are best experienced in a multiplayer setting. With fighting games such as Smash Bros, they can be enjoyed alone, but the real experience lies in playing with family and friends. In a stroke of brilliance, the developer extended a gift to those without family or friends and made Maximum Carnage a single-player experience. I've got to praise the developer, who clearly researched their demographic before making this decision after realizing sitting on your couch alone and seeing a multiplayer option would cause some hurt feelings. So it's not an option. This is a single player experience as it should be. This game wasn't designed with a friend in mind because LJN knew those of us buying this masterpiece wouldn't have time for friends. Now, when someone tells you they love Maximum Carnage, you'll understand why and have a deep appreciation for the game, their connection to it, and why it remains a fan favorite decades after its release. That's it for now. Until next time, thank you for watching Retro Impressions.